It's like that movie, The Invention of Lying, you know, with Ricky Gervais, I don't know. Like, you could literally tell anybody anything. You could say anything at this point in history and people would believe you. Like, really? Whoa, oh my god, you don't say? Here's my house, take all my money, whatever you need to cast the spell. Hello everybody, welcome to the very first video on my new channel. And hello everybody, and welcome to the very first video in on my new channel. I am assuming that most of you here know me, know my face, and thank you so much for subbing early and having faith in me. If you don't know me, hello, my name is Leah Nicole, and I don't know, I'm weird. I know a lot of people like researching true crime, but I like to research true crime and really scary stories I go deep, like I do deep dives. So then I have all these stories in my head and I don't really have anyone to like go into this much detail with. So here we are. I'm going to tell it to a camera and hope that people listen. Yeah, I don't know. Anyways, thank you so much for being here. If you don't mind me asking, if you do enjoy the very first video here, could you please subscribe? I don't know, it would mean the world if you could subscribe and just help out a brand new channel. So, my first story, what an annoying one. If you do not get as annoyed as I did by the end of this story, and like as triggered as I did, I don't know what to tell you. Like you may be too good for this world or something like that. But Mary Bateman, ooh, terrible, terrible person. Have you heard of her? Probably not, unless you are a fan of old historical true crime. Maybe you have, I don't know. But let me tell you a little bit about her, about this evil woman. A little synopsis before we get into it. Basically, this woman pretended to be a witch. She said that she had all of these amazing powers and abilities. Like she could help anybody with anything, like illnesses. She could make charms, potions. She could tell the future. Like you name it, she could do it. And then of course, she would charge an absolute fortune for her services. And then, she ended up killing a bunch of her clients. So, yeah. Mary Harker was born at Ainsby in the parish named Topcliffe, which is near Thirsk, in 1768. And if you are from the opposite side of the world as I am, and I had no idea where any of those places were, it took place in England. Her parents were very small farmers who, quote, had always maintained a reputable disposition. So what I think is meant by this is that her family was just very honest, like probably very hardworking, and as a lot of parents do, they tried to instill really good values into their children. But clearly, Mary didn't get the memo, and she didn't really grow up into a good person. She grew up into a terrible charlatan. Let's talk about it. Her life of crime began very early on, at about only 5 years old. She began stealing things, and everything that she stole, she would hide in her father's barn. And then she would just hide them there for months and months at a time. And after a few months, she would take the item from its hiding place, and she'd be like, look what I found. It's a pair of beautiful Moroccan shoes, and I found them, so they are mine now. You know, finders keepers. And I know it's not like super uncommon for young kids to think that, right? Like you find something, you like it, and you want to keep it. And generally, your guardians or whoever will teach you that, no, you can't keep that, you have to give it back. But what's interesting with Mary is that from as early as 5 years old, she didn't learn that. And she was kind of playing like this long game, stealing these items, like hiding them in the barn for months and months at a time, waiting for the person to forget about their missing item. And then she would bring them out in the hopes that nobody would know that she stole it. Like, you have to give her credit. That's kind of smart for a 5-year-old, right? When I was 5, I stole something, and I definitely didn't go about it the way that Mary did. Do you guys remember Pogs? Like, they were a big deal when I was little, and they were like little circular, just little cardboard circles. They had pictures on them, and I was obsessed with the Disney ones. And you would put them face down, put the picture face down, and then you'd have to take a slammer, which is a piece of metal, and you'd slam them. And any of the Pogs that flipped right side up, you got to keep. And I love them. And when I was little, my mom and I were in some store. I think it was like a grocery store or something that sold Pogs. But I wanted them, and my mom wouldn't buy me anymore. So I just took a big handful of them out of this big bin when she wasn't looking, stuffed them in my pocket, and when we got home, I hid them in my room. And then this is where I messed up, because I was way too excited to just keep these new Pogs to myself. So I went and brought them to my mom, and I was like, hey, I got some Pogs. And she was like, where'd you get those? And being like the genius child that I thought I was, I hadn't thought it through at all. So I just said, I found them. And we got in the car, we drove back to the store, and my mom proceeded to make me walk up to the manager, return the Pogs, tell her what I did, and say sorry. And I was mortified. But of course, it was a very valuable lesson. And from what I understand, like, Mary's parents did not do this. So basically, Mary pretty much learned that stealing was okay from a young age. And she even stole stuff from like really close friends and family members, and she never got in trouble for it. But the one consequence was that she did begin to develop a pretty bad reputation. People in her parish, they knew that she was a thief. And I guess they didn't really have any evidence to get her in any trouble. Or maybe she was too young or something, I don't know. But yeah, she developed a bad reputation. And in 1789, at 13 years old, she had to move away from home. And like so many young girls at the time, she found work as a servant. And she was working in Thirsk, living in other people's houses, like as a live-in servant. But this didn't last long. She would work for one family for a very, very short amount of time and then quit. And this was because she was stealing from basically every single home that employed her. And it wasn't long before her reputation followed her from Topcliffe to Thirsk, which was also a tiny town. And she believed that she was going to be able to escape like her original reputation, but that didn't happen. In Thirsk, she became unemployable. Like everybody knew if you hired her, she would steal from you. So it was time to move again. She moved from Thirsk to York. And again, she became a live-in servant, but this only lasted about a year because she was caught again for stealing. And it seemed like this time it was a little bit worse than the others because when she left her place of work, she left behind like all of her clothes and even her wages. So she was basically thrown out from the premises. The premises. I don't know. But this is when she moved to Leeds. And I'm pretty sure Leeds is larger now, but it was definitely larger now as well. But it was definitely larger then too. What? Leeds was much bigger. It was a city that was booming in industrialization, and I'm sure she believed that her reputation was definitely not going to follow her there. Little did she know she was going to gain a much worse reputation. So she was 19 years old, and she moved in with a dressmaker or a seamstress. The official term was a mantua maker, which was a maker of women's clothing. Here, she basically learned a trade. Like she learned from this woman how to make clothing, and she eventually opened up her own seamstress business. So she was starting on a good path, and it would have been good if she kept to it, but we wouldn't be here now if that was the case. So her business did okay. It supported her, but it wasn't enough for her. And I looked into this a little bit just out of curiosity. So some say that Mary was a kleptomaniac because of her stealing. But kleptomania is an inability to resist the urge to steal. And most often, the stolen items are of very little value. Like you would be wondering, why would you steal that? And Mary had really always stolen valuable things, like especially clothing and other things that she could resell for a lot of money at the time. So I think she stole maybe because she just wanted a better life, like a higher class life. She wanted to be one of the wealthy women whom she served as a servant. Like, I don't really think she had kleptomania. I think she just wanted items for survival, and then as she got older, she just wanted nicer things and more money. But that's just my opinion. I don't have any evidence or anything for that. So she worked as a seamstress for a few years, and while this was okay, the business just wasn't bringing enough in for her. Like, she was surviving fine, but like I said, she wanted more. So she started a second business. She became a witch. Which at the time was apparently very profitable if you didn't get caught and you didn't kill people, both of which Mary did. So she had no prerequisites. I don't really know how you would get any in the first place, but all of a sudden, poof, she was a witch. She was able to make potions, and she said she could cure illnesses. She could make people fall in love with you, like love potions. She would do fortune telling. But her specialty was apparently helping lovesick girls. And keep in mind, she was still pretty young at this point. She was only 23 or 24 when she met a man named John Bateman, and this would become her husband. So they dated for only 3 weeks, and then they got married. Because at this age, at 23 years old, you were pretty much just a dried up old spinster. So the marriage had to be quick, like boom, boom, boom. And then, they were hitched. Unfortunately for John, however, Mary's true personality shone through almost immediately. They didn't have their own home yet, so they stayed in a lodging house at first. And here, her previous sticky fingers, whatever you want to call them, they really came back with a vengeance. In one lodging home, Mary broke the lock of another lodger's security box and flat out stole his watch and silver spoons, as well as 2 guineas. I don't mean guinea pigs. It was a currency. And apparently, in today's money, I think a guinea was like $1.05 or something. So in the 1800s, stealing 2 guineas was a big deal. And this lodger accused her of stealing. He caught her, and Mary managed to get out of trouble just by returning the items. Everybody forgot about everything. Then Mary and John got their own home, and to make more money for themselves, they had lodgers stay with them. My boyfriend is getting a snack. I wonder what he got. I heard a knife and I heard the bread bag open, so maybe he made peanut butter and jelly sandwich, which sounds really good right now. They had lodgers stay with them, and this even went on to steal from her own lodgers. One of the lodgers that they had kept small amounts of money, again in a box in his room, and he said that this money kept disappearing. He accused Mary of stealing it because she would have been the only person in his room, and she completely denied it. But he continued, and eventually she returned the stolen money. This woman, she just never learns. And her little, weaseling, thieving ways, they really just knew no bounds. Whenever I think of a thief, I always picture a weasel, a little weasel. Even though they're very cute animals, that's what I picture when I see just a little scheming person. Do you know what I mean? She was a scammer with 0 remorse. And it's weird how often her scams and thefts revolved around clothing and cloth. This is what I really noticed when I was doing the research. I guess these were very valuable and expensive items at the time, but still, you're gonna see, it's weird. And it goes back to me thinking how maybe she was just jealous of the rich women that she worked for as a servant from a really young age. She wanted beautiful clothing and tapestries and bedding, I don't know, all that kind of stuff. So in another scam, Mary went to a business that sold cloth and other materials for making clothing. She tells them that a woman named Mrs. Stevenson, so likely a very common name, needed materials to make a silk petticoat. She says Mrs. Stevenson needs 3 different materials, so I'm going to take 3 materials. She'll choose which one she wants. She's going to make the petticoat with it, and then I will return the other 2. So, trusting her, they give Mary the cloth and silk, And like she promised, she comes back with 2 of these materials, and she says Mrs. Stevenson made one petticoat with the other silk material. So just charge her for that stuff, put it on her account. And the scam worked. Like Mary simply kept the free silk material, while some poor woman with the last name Stevenson, who happened to have an account there, got charged for it, which would have probably been like a lot of money in the 1800s. And if you can believe it, like Mary pulled this scam off 2 more times. She just changed the name of the ladies that she was like picking up the material for. And this making up names and like working for them scam, this would be a very recurring theme for Mary. You're gonna see. And if you are not annoyed by this woman yet, this should make you angry. This woman faked her husband's father's death. And that's not even the worst part. Mary and John had only been married for a year at this point, and if they hadn't gotten married so quickly, John would have been out of there. But he was stuck with her now. So, one day, right after mail delivery, Mary skips on down to where her husband is working. She wipes the smile off of her face, and then she starts fake crying. John is asking her, "Oh my God, what is wrong?" And she says, "This letter just came from Thirsk." John reads the letter, and it goes on to say that his father, back in Thirsk, has contracted a deadly illness, and he doesn't have much time. The letter tells John to come home right away if you wish to see him before he dies. And John loved his father, so of course he stops what he's doing. He goes and tells his employer what is going on, and he even borrows money from his boss so that he can get on the road right away. He makes the journey in record time, and lo and behold, he sees his father standing in the street, and he's completely fine. Confused, John says, "Dad, I'm so happy you're okay." And his father is like, "What are you talking about? I'm completely fine." So now John is pretty pissed. He realizes that the letter, for whatever reason, was faked, and the only person who could have faked it was his lovely, scheming wife. So he returns home to ask her what the hell is going on. And when he gets home, he opens the door and quickly realizes why Mary needed to get him out of the house. Was she planning like a surprise party for him? Was she having like a steamy love affair and she had another man over? Nope. John enters the house and he sees nothing. Like literally nothing. The house is empty. In his absence, Mary had sold every single piece of furniture in their home. And then she just pocketed the money. And then she gave the money away. And apparently it was to pay off another person that she had previously stolen from. So she's just like up to her old tricks. And whatever she had done this time, clearly she'd gotten caught again, gotten into a lot of trouble, and was forced to pay back everything that she owed, which apparently was a lot. So clearly she wasn't very good at stealing because the dumbass kept getting caught, and she had to give it back or pay it back like every single time she stole. And if you think that's the end of her screwing her husband over, you would be very wrong. A few days later, John goes over to visit some friends. Like, he probably just went over to their house so he could sit on a couch or a chair since there was no furniture in their home. But while he was out, Mary went ahead and sold all of his clothing. And she left nothing. Like, this poor guy, can you imagine? Your partner gets into some serious trouble. They need to sell all of your furniture to get out of that trouble. It's like, okay, I understand you had to do what you had to do. You forgive them, you start to move on, only to have them then turn around and sell all of your clothing again while you're out, behind your back. And if you think that's bad, just wait for her next little scheme. This woman is such a little weasel. God. And this one is actually really, really awful because she took advantage of an actual tragedy. So it was 1796 and there was a huge fire in one of the factories in town. And an entire wall of this factory actually fell, crumbled or fell, and it killed a lot of people. And Mary, this absolutely disturbed human being, took this as an opportunity to make a profit. She went to a woman named Mrs. Maud, who I guess was very wealthy, and she was also very wealthy and generous. No, she was very generous with her money. So Mary goes up to her and she says, I found a young child who was killed when the wall fell. And this child's mother, they don't have cloth or linen to wrap the child's body in. So she begs Mrs. Maud for a sheet or a blanket to give to this grieving mother. And of course, Mrs. Maud gives her a sheet. And Mary just turned around and she immediately pawned it for cash. And Mary Bateman pulled this same scheme 3 more times. She said she needed linens for bodies. She got the linens and then she sold them. And did she stop there? Oh no, she didn't. She then went door to door telling people that she was a nurse from the hospital. And she begged people for any old linens or new linens or any sheets that they could spare. Due to the influx of patients from the fire, the hospital desperately needs cloth, anything to help dress all of the wounds. And of course, most people in this world are really good, so many people donated anything that they could. Mary took those linens, turned around, and immediately pawned them for more cash. At this point, John knows what his wife is doing, and he's done. He can't believe that he married this psycho. And he actually tries to run away from her. He tries to get away from her by joining the militia. But she follows him. She's like, no, you're not getting away from me. You can't get away from me. And she went with him. And I didn't really understand, how she was able to follow him, but she did. And then after serving for 3 years, they left together and they moved to Marsh Lane in Leeds. And from what it sounds like, Mary almost gained experience during this time. The saying when people go into prison and they just kind of end up learning more about how to be a better criminal, and you come out with a PhD in criminality. That was from Blow, by the way. Yes. Go Johnny Depp. She became a professional in witchcraft, pretty much. Or like fraudulent witchcraft, and even more so than before. But something happened, and she was now able to present herself as a now very well-known and distinguished witch. And I think I already mentioned it. One of her specialties was helping lovesick girls, and we'll get into that and you know what I mean. But again, she was doing fortune telling, making potions, charms. She even ventured into female fertility and other things as well. She wasn't a nurse, she wasn't a doctor, she knew nothing about the human body. Just putting that out there. So this is what Mary did next. And the lengths that this woman was willing to go to, like to get what she wanted, they were actually mind-blowing. Like the lies just rolled off of this woman's tongue. And honestly, I don't know how people believed anything that she said. Mary Bateman invents a woman named Mrs. Moore. And keep in mind, Mrs. Moore does not exist. She is a figment of Mary's imagination. Mary tells everybody that Mrs. Moore is a seventh child of a seventh child, which in witchcraft and like demonology or something, that's a very, very big deal. And basically, Mary begins like working for this fictitious woman. And Mrs. Moore was a very powerful witch who could help people with very serious illnesses, curses. She could save people from the apocalypse, like you name it. But of course, she will only save you with a hefty price tag. So Mary will connect clients with Mrs. Moore. So clients will hand the money over to Mary, then Mary will go back to Mrs. Moore with the money and all of the clients' problems that they need solved. And Mrs. Moore will give Mary the solution to bring back to the client. So the clients hire Mrs. Moore, but they never actually meet her. They only deal with Mary. And of course, they never meet her again because she does not exist. It's a scheme. And the first woman who was scammed was believed to be a lady named Mrs. Greenwood. So Mary approached her and tells her that she is in danger of taking her own life. So just stop and think about that for a minute. Mary literally says, you are in danger of committing suicide. And on top of that, Mary tells her that her husband, Mrs. Greenwood's husband, has been arrested and he is in jail. And this poor woman's husband was not arrested. He just wasn't at home. But being a very superstitious time in the world, she believed everything that Mary was saying. So Mary tells her, look, I work for a woman named Mrs. Moore. Only Mrs. Moore can prevent you from killing yourself. And your husband is going to be killed by 4 guards in jail tonight unless you do the following. You need to collect 4 pieces of gold, 4 pieces of leather, 4 pieces of blotting paper, and 4 brass screws. Hand all that expensive stuff over to me so that I can go and give it to Mrs. Moore and she will screw down the guards and save your husband's life as well as yours. I think screwing down meant like binding a person. Like I think it's a witchcraft term. It's like preventing somebody from doing harm. And the only place I've ever heard that was in the craft, like the old, like the 90s craft, the only good one. So I don't know, kind of weird, very sad. With this payment, Mrs. Moore would work her magic and she would save the Greenwoods. And this poor woman, of course, is panicking. You know, she's thinking her husband is going to die. She's thinking, I'm going to die as well. And she says in a panic, I don't have 4 pieces of gold. What am I going to do? So Mary tells her, well, go and steal it from somebody. And this is when, thank God, Mrs. Greenwood realizes that it is probably a scam. And she told Mary to, like, get lost. But unfortunately, her next victims wouldn't be so lucky. They wouldn't be lucky enough to realize how crazy this woman really was. This theme of asking for expensive items as payment became Mary's thing. Like whatever Mary wanted or needed, she just told her clients that Mrs. Moore needed those things in order to complete her witchcraft or make a potion or something like that. Like whatever she asked for, it was all for Mrs. Moore's magic. And it was scary, like how easy it was for her. She would go up to a person and say, like, this is one of the real things that she did. She went up to a person and she said, your father-in-law is going to murder you. And this poor person was left thinking, like, holy shit, what? And they'd be terrified and they would do whatever they had to do to not get murdered. So Mary would tell them, yeah, you know, you need to go and get me 1 guinea. I'm going to hand that over to a woman named Mrs. Moore, and Mrs. Moore will screw that person down. You know, by saying that, she meant she will like make a charm. She'll say abracadabra, do a spell, and you'll be saved. You know, your father-in-law won't kill you as long as you give me this money. So they gave Mary the payment, and lo and behold, their father-in-law didn't murder them, and it was a miracle. It was a beautiful miracle. Like, it's so sad how easy it was, and it really seemed that Mary's business thrived on terror, and that's the saddest part. Like, all she had to do was scare people with death or misfortune, and then in exchange for money, they would be saved. In another case, she told a mother that her daughter would become pregnant at 14 years old with an illegitimate child. So, not only was that bad enough, like having a child out of wedlock at this time, you know, that was a big no-no, but she also threw in another little detail. She said that after getting pregnant, the daughter would be either murdered by the father or, again, she would take her own life. But for the simple price of a few silver coins, the magical Mrs. Moore will be able to prevent all of this from happening. So this panicked mother hands over the coins to Mary, and Mary pockets them. But she tells the mother that Mrs. Moore took her coins and she turned them into a silver charm. Now, Mary returned the silver charm to the mother and the daughter, And the daughter was instructed to wear the charm until she passed her 14th birthday. Then she would be safe from the pregnancy and from killing herself and being murdered as well. And of course, the mother thought it was a little odd that the silver charm just looked like a piece of pewter. Pooter. One of my pugs' name is Pootie, and I always call him Pooter, so I don't know, I just thought of my pug and it made me happy. But yeah, the mom thought that this charm looked like a piece of pooter, which used to be a fun combination of tin and lead. So this little girl began wearing a charm made out of lead. Like I said, this woman is something else. Another time, a young pregnant woman came to Mary after her lover abandoned her. But not to worry. For the simple price of a gold coin, Mary would go to Mrs. Moore, and Mrs. Moore would make the charm that would make her lover return and marry her. So Mary Bateman takes her coin, goes to Mrs. Moore, and returns with this magical charm. Like after pocketing the gold, she gives the charm to this poor woman. But sadly, for some strange reason, the magic isn't working, and her lover, he doesn't return. But that's okay. Mary explains to her that it just means that your lover is very, very strong-minded, which is a good thing. Mary would just need to collect a second payment to bring to Mrs. Moore, and then she would make a second charm, which would be strong enough to reel this guy back in. But to everybody's shock, not even the second charm did the trick. So this poor girl, she didn't really have much money left, so she had to abandon the hope that the love spell would bring her lover back. She moved to Leeds, and for some reason stayed in contact with Mary. But in Leeds, she became a domestic servant, and she became employed by a young unmarried man. And seeing another chance to make money, Mary Bateman told this woman, girl, this is your chance. Your new employer is single, ready to mingle. This is your future husband. For the simple price of another gold coin, Mrs. Moore can make you a charm or a love potion to make your new employer propose to you. And this poor woman thought that this was a brilliant idea, but it wouldn't work because she was pregnant with another man's child. And seeing another opportunity to make money, Mary said, "Don't you worry, I've got a solution for that." She mixed up some medicines and she told her that this will get rid of the baby. The girl drank this concoction. It did get rid of the baby, but it also made her, the mother, deathly sick. And if you can believe it, her lover, the original one, actually did come back at that time, and seeing how sick she was, he married her. But she was so sick, she died immediately before the wedding or right after. She didn't make it. I hate this woman so much that I really like hearing the stories of when she gets caught, so let's throw another one of those in there. One day, a gentleman was in town buying meat from the butcher. He ordered a large leg of mutton, a really expensive cut of meat. He asked the butcher if the boy working in the store could bring the meat to his house, right then and there. he wasn't going home yet, but he wanted the meat delivered to his cook so he could start dinner. Mary happened to be there at the butcher's, and she overheard this request. So she hurries out of the store and she runs to the bridge that the boy was going to have to cross to make the delivery. When she sees the boy, she stops him and she introduces herself as the gentleman's servant. And she really plays it up. She actually scolds the kid for taking too long with the delivery. And she grabs the meat, she hits him over the head with it, and she tells him, well, I'm just going to carry the meat back to the house myself because you're useless. And the poor kid doesn't know what to do, so of course he gives it to her. An hour passes, and the cook back at the gentleman's house is waiting for the meat, but it never comes. So the gentleman went back to the butcher to find out where his meat is. And he tells him, well, it was delivered. And they talk to the boy, who explains that, your servant, the woman, she took it from me. Luckily, with the boy's description, the gentleman remembered seeing Mary at the butcher, and he actually knew who she was and where she lived. So he marches straight on down to her house. He goes to her house and he confronts her. She opens the door and he can see straight in to her fire, and there's his leg of mutton literally hanging over the fire as they're talking. And she's not even trying to hide it. She just goes back inside, grabs a big chunk of change, pays him for the meat, and the subject is dropped. That's one of the things that I hate most about this woman. Of course, other than the fact that she killed people, but she had money. She had a lot of money from all of her schemes and her previous business. She didn't need to steal anything. She stole because she enjoyed it. And her next pair of victims were two sisters who owned a little linen shop. A linen shop. What is this woman's deal when it comes to clothing and linen? What is going on here? She was obsessed. I don't know. I guess linen was a hot commodity back in the day. Maybe. I don't know. The Kitchen Sisters owned a linen shop near St. Peter's Square in Leeds. And I'm sure, as you can already guess, Marvelous Mary over here entered their lives. And it really didn't end very well. This is her first murders. Mary got super involved in their lives. She was an obsessed best friend who just wouldn't leave them alone. And it was creepy because they were still complete strangers. And Mary was constantly coming over to their house. She was helping with chores and cooking. And she even offered to work in their linen shop when they weren't there. And these poor sisters just thought that she was this really sweet woman who was going to, be their friend. But they also thought that she was going to get them in contact with the mysterious and magical Mrs. Moore. The Kitchen Sisters wanted their fortunes told, and they wanted to know what was in store for them in the stars. And luckily, their new friend Mary could get them in contact with just the witch who could do that. So it's been 10 days since Mary has thrust herself into the sisters' lives. And what do you know? One of the sisters falls fatally ill. Like, it's not just a cold. Nope, it is very serious. But thank God they have this new amazing friend, Mary Bateman. Luckily, Mary is there. She mixes up some special medicine for Miss Kitchen. And does she get better? I hate to disappoint you, but the answer is no. Miss Kitchen is dying, and she knows that she's dying. So she calls for a good friend of the sisters, as well as their mother, to come and see her in her last days. And again, weren't they just so lucky? They had this new best friend, Mary, who was there helping out just as much as she could. She was making meals, she was helping out at the store, feeding them, just doing everything she could in their time of need. So the sisters' other good friend arrives, and she's in perfect health when she gets there. And she's probably thinking, like, who the hell is this? When she sees Mary. But, like, who's this weirdo claiming to be your best friend? What was that? That's my impression of Mary Bateman. Then, only a short time after this friend's arrival, the friend tells the sisters that she had discovered a very important secret, and she needs to tell them right away, like it's life or death. But surprise, surprise, she suddenly gets sick, and she is suddenly so weak that she can't tell them that big secret. And then she dies, and the secret goes bye-bye. Isn't that interesting? No? Yes. The Kitchen's mother then arrives to the house, and nobody knows like what illness is floating around this household. But the mother, she was also in perfect health when she arrived. So it's weird, but she gets sick as well. The remaining sister also contracts the strange illness, and both of those women die. And the first sister to get sick also dies. But who somehow miraculously survived this seemingly very contagious illness, you might ask? Well, Mary Bateman, of course. Despite being over at their house all the time in close contact, she never got sick. And at first, it was believed that all three women had died of cholera, but in a creepy twist of events, Mary didn't deem this disease to be like gruesome enough, and for some really weird reason she fought it, and she told people like, oh no, they didn't die from cholera, they died from the plague. Like, thanks for your input there, Mary. And even more interesting, by the time the last Kitchen sister fell ill, there was nobody around but Mary, right? The first sister died, the friend died, the mother died. So when the doctor came to see her, he was insistent, like without a doubt, that she had been poisoned. That was what every symptom of hers was pointing to. So he asks Mary, who is like her only caregiver, and she's like, oh. And of course, her sister, mother, and friend are all dead, so none of them can say anything. The doctor was so sure that the Kitchen sister had been poisoned that he started looking around the house for anything that would have done this to her. He was actually looking for like poisoned water that had been purposely left out to kill flies. Which, like, okay, that doesn't seem very safe. But he was like, that's common. If you guys have that, maybe she accidentally had a sip of the poison water, something like that. But Mary, she didn't know anything. And then, after the sister died, he wanted to perform an autopsy to confirm that she had been poisoned. But with no family remaining, he didn't have permission to do that. So god damn it, Mary got away with it again. And since Mary had made this huge deal about how the Kitchens and their friend had all died to the plague, well, like all the neighbors and everybody in the town was terrified to go anywhere near their house. Like, my God, if you step foot inside this house, you are going to die. Which, I mean, that was probably true at the time, right? If there was plague virus in the house, I don't know. But somehow, by the miracle of God, Mary Bateman survived. So Mary reassures them, she'll take care of the house, and then when it's all cleaned up and everything is good to go, a lock can be put on it so nobody can get in and get sick. Well, Mary did go back to the house and she stripped it clean. Like, there wasn't one thing left. She stole everything that she could sell for money. Then she went down to the Kitchen's linen shop and she stripped that clean too, including all of the accounting books. But I'm pretty sure she'd been taking stuff from their shop from the get-go. Like, as soon as the first sister got sick, she was like, oh no, don't you worry. You stay home and rest. I'll cover for you in the shop. Meanwhile, she's just hauling stuff out of there and they don't even know it. People are so trusting in these days. It's so sad. I don't trust anybody. I really don't. It's bad. I don't trust people. At this point, and I'm not sure why, Mary decided to get rid of Mrs. Moore. I don't know if she killed her off or what happened. But now she's working as a conduit for another witchy woman who again was completely made up. And this woman was named Miss Blythe or Mrs. Blythe. I think it was Mrs. People were probably more trusting if she said it was a Mrs. But just like Mrs. Moore, Mrs. Blythe was a powerful witch who could tell your fortune, your future, remove curses, create curses, make charms, and all that good stuff. And all you had to do to get her services was pay Mary Bateman. Mary would give that money to Mrs. Blythe, and then Miss Blythe would pass the charm or whatever it was back to the client through Mary. I'm sure you understand that by now. I apologize. And if at this point you're wondering the same thing that I was, how on earth does this woman keep getting away with all of this stuff? I know this was a really long time ago. I don't know. I can't help it. I don't understand how everybody continued to fall for her shenanigans. I don't get it. Mary, John, and the children that they had moved around all the time. They never stayed in one area for very long. Just like when she was a teenager. Just keep moving. No one's gonna know. They thought your reputation can only follow you so far, right? Wrong. One time, after they'd moved into a new house in a new area, Mary went ahead and poisoned a poor family just for the sake of poisoning them. The father was a clothing maker. Again, what the hell is going on with her obsession for linen and clothing? I swear, like, she targeted this family just because the father was a clothing maker. But on the flip side, this father had lost his job, and him and his wife and the 4 children were now facing severe poverty. And knowing that this family was hungry, Mary went into this family's home and she left them a cake. And when the wife and the kids got home, they ate it. They were hungry. They were probably just thinking, oh, some sweet, generous person left us a cake. And can you guess what happened? Even though the cake tasted a little funny, according to them, they all kept eating it because they were hungry, and then they all got violently sick. Luckily, they did call a doctor in time who was able to flush their systems out and save their lives. Does it get worse? Yeah, it does. It gets a lot worse. Another poor family named the Snowdens, they also got caught up in Mary's twisted web of lies. For whatever reason, this family believed that their son was going to drown. Like there was a weird premonition or something. I don't know. But once Mary heard about this gut feeling or dream or something, she was very quick to offer them the services of Mrs. Blythe. So Mrs. Blythe, she'd be able to prevent this tragic drowning, which, yes, was on course. It was going to happen. But she was going to stop it. By word of Mary, Miss Blythe told the Snowdens, I'm going to stop it, and here's what you have to do. After paying me, of course, I'm going to have Mary here take Mr. Snowden's expensive silver watch along with 12 guineas, and I'm going to have her sew these into a little package. And then she's going to sew those packages in or under your mattress. Then I'm going to say a spell from my unknown secret location, and you are going to sleep on top of your watch and these coins, and this will make a charm, and it's going to prevent your son from drowning in the future. Now, she was very specific. Like, the Snowdens couldn't sew the watch and the coins into their own bed. It had to be Mary going into their bedroom, sewing the little purses in, and doing it like in secret, or they couldn't be in the room or something. So Mary goes to their house. She sews the watch and the coins into their bed, and she leaves. And of course, she just pocketed the watch and the coins for herself, right? And I think she replaced the watch with a lump of coal, like a literal lump of coal. And the coins, I believe, were later found out to be cabbage leaves or something like that, which I don't understand that one, because the texture and the weight of gold doesn't really match up to that of a cabbage leaf. But okay, Mary, you weren't the brightest bulb in the box. And then, just for fun, Mary tells them that Mrs. Blythe, she knew that something was happening. She knew something that the Snowdens didn't yet know. And it wasn't the drowning, it was something else. And it was devastating. Mrs. Blythe informed the family that if they didn't move houses, like if they didn't move immediately, like get out of Leeds and move to Bowling, she was specific on the location. She said if this didn't happen, their daughter was going to become a sex worker. Like, oh God, we can't have that. No, what's the family gonna do? On Mary's advice, they immediately pack up and move. And Mary tells them, you best leave all of your possessions behind, especially your furniture. Leave it all here, and you have to move into the empty house in order for the spell to work. Oh, and you have to leave your key for me. Like, I'll keep it safe. Don't worry. I don't know how that is not a red flag, Mr. and Mrs. Snowden, but okay. Mary was smart enough to tell them to take their mattress with them, which had the watch and the coins sewed in. She's like, yeah, you gotta take that with you. That's the only thing you're allowed to take, because you have to sleep on that in order for the spell to work. Meanwhile, while they're living in this new unfurnished home, Mary tells them that Mrs. Blythe says that in addition to everything, like everything you've already done, they're soon going to have to drink some specific potion. And she called it a preparation potion. Preparation for what? I'm assuming to save their son from drowning and save the daughter from working on the streets. I don't know, whatever it was, they have to drink something very special, which Mary gave them, and she instructed them to drink it on a very specific date. Meanwhile, the two children, who are completely fine, are probably thinking, like, what the hell are our parents doing? What are they doing? But the family moves to Bowling, like Mary told them to. And what do you know? Somebody steals all of the possessions from their old house while they're gone. So at this point, Mr. Snowden, he's like, hey, we could really use that money and my silver watch that are screwed into my mattress. Like, we need that. Everything's been stolen. Times are getting tough. We need that money. But Mary, quick on her feet, says, oh, no. Don't you dare open those pouches in your mattress just yet. They haven't finished, like, working their magic. If you open them too soon, the spell's going to be broken and your son is going to drown. They couldn't open the pouches to get the money back until after they had drank the preparation poison. That sounds convenient, Mary. So, to save you some thought, Mary was going to poison them. She was just going to take out the entire family. Like, she sucked out everything from them, everything of value. And then when she knew she was done with them, she was going to kill them off. But luckily, thank God, the family wised up and didn't drink the potion, whatever it was. I don't know. I mean, we all know what it was. It was poison, but I don't know. It's like that movie, The Invention of Lying, with Ricky Gervais. I don't know. Like, you could literally tell anybody anything. You could say anything at this point in history and people would believe you. Like, really? Whoa, oh my God. Here's my house. Take all my money. Whatever you need to cast the spell. So now, as we are approaching the end, everything she has done up until this point is awful. But this takes the cake. A couple in their 40s named Rebecca and William Peregos hire Mrs. Blythe for a problem that they're having. Rebecca had been suffering from intense pain in her side, and the couple was convinced that she had been cursed. And from word of mouth, they'd heard about Mary Bateman, and they knew that she could put them in contact with Mrs. Blythe, who could help them. And let me just tell you now, this transaction does not end well. And it gets carried on for months, like almost a year. So here's what happened. First, Mary tells the Peregos that these are Mrs. Blythe's instructions in order to remove your curse. First, you need to send me 4 guinea notes, and you need to wrap them up in a flannel petticoat. And if you don't know what a petticoat is, it's like an undergarment that's typically worn underneath a skirt or a dress to add like warmth, but it's also to make your skirt have like a rounder, fluffier shape. But again, Mary demands a beautiful flannel piece of clothing because this woman has a weird obsession with linens and clothes. The Peregos give Mary 4 guinea notes wrapped up in the flannel petticoat. Mary gives this money to Mrs. Blythe as payment, and now the process of removing Rebecca's curse can begin. Mary is instructed to go to their home, and she needs to put 4 gold coins into silk pouches, and then each pouch needs to be sewn into the Peregos mattress. 1 coin for each corner of the bed. And who provided these coins? The Peregos did, of course. So Mary sews the coins into their bed while they're out of the room, and she instructs them that you cannot open the pouches. Like, do not open them for at least 18 months, or Mrs. Blythe's magic won't work and Rebecca will remain cursed. So, did Mary just pocket the gold coins and replace them with like cabbage or something? Yes. Yes, she did. Thank you for asking. Did the Peregos know that she did that? No, of course they didn't. So this particular case was Mary's, like, I don't know, this was her big one. Like, this was no holds barred. She did not hold back on scamming the shit out of this poor couple. Like, they literally lost everything that they had. And this is how Mary did it. Mrs. Blythe would send the couple letters. And of course, these letters were delivered to them by Mary Bateman. And Blythe basically told them that Rebecca's curse was so bad and it was so strong that she was having a lot of difficulty with this one. Like, she'd never dealt with getting rid of such a terrible curse or such a powerful one, and it was really taking a lot out of her. And because it was so strong, like, you know, she was going to need some extra help from the Peregos. And that help came in the form of expensive items, like groceries, clothing, and then just whatever she wanted or felt like having. She asked the Peregos to go and get it for her. The couple would give these items to Mary, and Mary would, you know, lovingly deliver them to Mrs. Blythe. And these letters that that Mrs. Blythe, aka Mary, wrote to them were just so ridiculous. And she would always address them as my dear friends. And this was my hair. This was the first one that she wrote. She said, "My dear friends, you must go down to Mary Bateman's house at Leeds on Tuesday, and you must carry with you 2 guinea notes, and you have to give these guinea notes to her. And then you must go and buy me a small cheese, a wheel of cheese, about 6 or 8 pounds." Which is not that small, but okay. And she's like, "Yeah, this is for a very particular use in getting rid of your curse. I need 8 pounds of cheese." Pretty typical. So yeah, she asks for this giant wheel of cheese. And then at the end of the letter, she says, "Be sure to burn this letter as soon as you are done reading it." So I just can't get over, like, Mary wanted like a Costco size, a lot bigger than that, of cheese just to eat. And instead of going out and getting it herself, she just dupes this poor couple into buying it for her, like pretending that it's a part of this whole scheme that she's running. And she basically turned this couple into Amazon Prime, 1-day delivery. Whatever Mary wanted, she got Rebecca and Mary to get it for her through the needs of Mrs. Blythe. So these are the other things that she would ask for. She would say, "My dear friends, I will be obliged to you if you will give me 6 of your china. I need 3 silver spoons, 1/2 pound of tea. I need 2 pounds of sugar. I need a new tea canister to put all the tea in, or else it just will not do. I durst not drink out of my own china. Oh, and when you're done reading this letter, you have to burn it with a flame." Do you see what she's doing there? Like, she's literally telling the Peregos to burn each of the letters after they've read them, and she blames it on like the devil or whatever the curse is. She says the curse will know what we're doing and how we're trying to stop it. So that's why you have to burn the letters. But she's just getting rid of the evidence. Weasel. And now this time, apparently Rebecca and William, they don't send their china and tea over, because I'm sure that stuff was very expensive, and I think sugar was even more expensive at this time. So when they don't send that stuff, Mary is not very happy that they're not cooperating. So she tries to scare them a little bit by writing them another letter, but it's from Mrs. Blythe, of course. And it says, "My dear friends, I will be obliged to you if you will buy me a camp bedstead, a new bed, and bedding." This bitch is literally asking them for a new bed. A new bed. Like, think about how expensive a bed is today. And in addition, she wants a new blanket, a pair of sheets, and a long bolster. And she also throws in there, just to be, not to be too much of a nuisance, she says, you don't have to buy like the nicest pillow. A common one will be just fine. And she says, "I cannot lay in my own bed, and this is due to the fact that the planets are out of line, and it all has to do with your wife's curse." And she says, "I must have one of you buying all of this stuff, or it will not do. You must bring down the china, the sugar, the caddy, the spoons, the tea, everything. You have to bring that down when you bring the new bed to me, and it all has to be packed up together, and I need it as soon as possible. Oh, and this letter must be burned as soon as you read it." So the curse is just so bad that it is physically harming Blythe, and she can't even sleep, the poor woman. And when one is sick, you have to have tea and you have to have sugar and you have to have beautiful new china to drink it from, and you need a new bed. So this poor couple, they fall for it. They spend a ton of money, they buy her all of these new items, and they hand everything over to Mary. Over time, Mrs. Blythe requested an insane amount of stuff. Mary did. And the Peregos got all of it for her. She asked for a goose, like a live goose. She wanted more cloth, more clothing. She asked for 60 pounds of butter, along with 200 eggs, more sheets, alcohol, new shoes, more pillows. She's just stocking her house and kitchen up with whatever she wants. Like I said, she's treating them like Amazon Prime. It's Prime Day. And what the hell was she gonna do with 60 pounds of butter? Hello? In one request, Mary just wanted a pair of pincers. So instead of going out and getting this little tool herself, she's like, how can I dupe the Peregos into giving me this tool for free? Oh, I know. I'll just tell William that Mrs. Blythe is instructing you to hammer 2 pieces of iron to your front door. This is going to protect your wife from the curse. But she tells him it's very specific. You have to hammer the iron in with a pair of pincers. A hammer just won't do. And then once you've hammered the iron in, you have to give the pair of pincers to me once you're done. And if you don't do this, your wife is going to be cursed forever. So Mary got a new pair of pincers. 1 month later, in April, another letter arrives. And at this point, Mary is thinking, she's basically gotten all she can out of this couple. So before they get suspicious, she's going to kill them. And she tells them that unfortunately, the world just works like this sometimes, but both of you are about to get severely ill. Mrs. Blythe can see this coming. Mrs. Blythe and myself, we don't think this is fair at all, but who's to argue with the will of God? Luckily, though, thank God, Mrs. Blythe can save you both. Since she can see into the future, she knows what is going to kill you, so she's going to provide you with medicine, and you're both gonna fight your way through this inevitable illness, which is coming very soon to claim you. So Mary instructs them that they need to bring 1/2 pound of honey to Mary Bateman. Or Mary tells them, bring me 1/2 pound of honey. That's what Blythe is telling you. And then I am going to mix medicine into this honey. And this medicine, of course, will be provided by Mrs. Blythe. And in addition, we're also going to give you 6 packets of another type of medicine. And these packages are to be mixed into pudding. And they need to be eaten for 6 days straight. And these are the other interesting little instructions to go along with it. If at any point the pudding makes you sick, do not go and see a doctor. The doctor, they're not going to be able to help you, not in any way. And if you do go see a doctor, that is really going to mess up the cure and the deadly illness. It's going to come for you. The other instructions that are given to them include the following. They must only make enough pudding for them and them alone. Like at each time, they must not give any of this pudding with the medicine in it, not even one drop, to another person. And if there is any pudding left over, they must discard it immediately and not let anybody else get into it. And if they do not eat all of this pudding and in the correct way, well, then you're gonna die and it's your own fault. So, pretty typical instructions like on the back of a pudding box. No big deal, not really a red flag or anything. Oh, and this is fun. If they do get sick while eating the pudding, well, that's what the honey medicine is going to be for. If you feel sick to your stomach, just take a couple of teaspoons of the honey and you'll feel much better. And this particular letter, instructing them with all of the weird rituals they had to do with this medication, they were told you have to bring this letter down to Mary Bateman's house and burn it right in front of her. So Mary was really making sure that she was getting rid of all of the evidence along the way. In the last letter, she told them that if they did not follow the instructions perfectly, they would all die. And this included Mrs. Blythe. She closed the letter by saying, "Now mind what I say, whatever you do. This letter must be burned in straw on the hearth by your wife." So the day comes when they are supposed to start eating the sacred pudding, which will save them. Ugh. They end up feeding a tiny bit of pudding to a cat who immediately dies. And for some crazy reason, the couple did not see this as a red flag or a warning sign to maybe not eat it. They eat the pudding as instructed. They both get violently sick. William complains of the worst headache that he has ever had. They have diarrhea, vomiting, all that terrible stuff. And then their tissues, like their lips, start dying. Their lips start turning black. William stops eating the pudding. It's making him so sick, he just can't do it. But Maria, she continues, and she believes she's going to get rid of her curse and save both of them. So she keeps getting sicker and sicker. And just like she was instructed, she refuses to go and see a doctor. Instead, she reaches for the honey medicine provided by Mary. And it didn't help. Rebecca died and William survived. And I'm assuming it was because he didn't finish all 6 days of the pudding. I don't know. But William is devastated and he's angry. This was supposed to save both of them, right? And now his beautiful wife is dead. So he tells Mary how angry he is, and she relays the message to Mrs. Blythe. And Mrs. Blythe writes him back saying, "Well, it's your own fault because you guys didn't follow the instructions properly." And she goes on to mention that the curse is now angry and it's even trying to kill her and Mary because Rebecca didn't do as she was told. And this piece of garbage, this little weasel, actually manages to convince William that they need to stay in contact because Rebecca's ghost is going to come back and she's going to haunt William, and the ghost is going to paralyze him. So he's in immediate danger. He's going to lose function in one side of his body from his deceased wife. This woman is off her rocker. like I'm telling you, or she is like, she's on a psycho rocker. I don't know, she's just rocking back and forth. She's psycho. William stays in contact with her, and she keeps writing him demanding even more stuff. Like, she needs more stuff to keep fighting the curse, and now she's trying to save him from the paralysis that's coming. William ends up sending her every piece of Rebecca's clothing, like every single piece she owned. Mrs. Blythe needed it. Again, the clothing, I don't know. And he keeps sending her money until the point that he is completely broke. He has nothing left. Everything that he and Rebecca had has gone to Mary and Mrs. Blythe. And at this point, he has nothing left to lose, and he has no money to his name. Rebecca is gone, so he goes to his bed and he opens the silk pouches with what are supposed to contain gold coins. The gold coins that Mary had sewn in there almost a year ago. You know, he needs the cash. But to his shock, there's no gold coins in there. Like, oh no. No gold coins for you. He finds old, rotten cabbage leaves. I would have assumed that the smell of rotting cabbage, like, would have been noticed at some point, but I don't know. It's a little questionable, like, how they didn't notice a rotting cabbage smell in their bedroom. But then again, they did eat pudding, which killed their cat. So I don't know. Ooh. When he asks Mary what happened to my gold, she pulls the same old trick that she did with the Snowdens. She says, I told you not to open it before 18 months, and you opened it early, so your gold turned into cabbage. Wasn't my fault. It was your fault. William finally realizes at this point what has happened. He's been completely duped. He's lost Rebecca, and he goes to the police and he tells them everything. Him and a police officer go to Mary Bateman's house, where she answers the door. She's like, oh, hi. She's all smirky and annoying, and this is a woman who never expects to get into trouble. William accuses her of murdering Rebecca, and she just turns that shit right around, and she's like, oh no, I didn't. William tried to poison me, and then he went on and he poisoned my husband as well. The police officer's not buying that because both Rebecca and her husband are completely fine. They go inside the house and they see all of the stuff that William and Rebecca had given to her. Like, everything is just sitting there in her house. I don't know if the goose was there, if it was like running around in the house or the backyard, I don't know. But they also find a bunch of poison. So, long story short, not really, this is a long video and my throat is killing me. So if you've gotten this far, please subscribe and like the video, my voice box, and I thank you. Mary is arrested for fraud, but more importantly, she's arrested for the murder of Rebecca Peregos. The trial was like a huge spectacle, and people from all over England wanted to be there to watch it, which is very common for trials back then, and of course today as well. Mary was only charged with the death of Rebecca. I don't know if they even knew about the kitchens, or maybe they didn't have enough evidence. I don't know, but I mean, it's okay because she definitely gets her comeuppance. I would say so. So tests were done on the honey and the pudding, and they found that the pudding had been laced with arsenic, which was awful But the worst offender was the honey. The what? The honey had been poisoned with something called mercury chloride. And mercury chloride poisoning would produce tissue lesions, kidney failure, circulatory collapse, and then death. So Mary's plan was to slowly make them very sick over those 6 days with the pudding, and then she knew that they would reach for the honey medicine to feel better. And this was like, really make sure that they died. William stopped eating the pudding early, so he never took any of the honey medicine. But sadly, Rebecca ate all of the pudding, and then she ate a lot of the honey to try and make herself feel better. Mary protested her innocence. She did admit to running like a few scams here and there in her lifetime. But my God, she would never, poison or kill anybody. She would never do that. Luckily, though, there were a ton of witnesses in this case who came forward and were called upon in court. Many of them talked about how they had been scammed by her, how they had gotten ill after receiving her medicines, how she'd given them medicine to abort their babies, which had almost killed them. And luckily, the Peregos had been very smart. They didn't burn all of the letters as they had been instructed to do so. So they had a few letters, and what do you know? Mrs. Blythe's handwriting was an exact match to Mary Bateman's. Shocking. So Mary's husband, John, he had also been arrested, but at the time, he was actually let go because even though he likely knew about all of her scamming and defrauding people, police believed that he didn't know anything about Rebecca's death, and he certainly had nothing to do with it. So the jury came to a decision very quickly. And I'm not kidding, it's in the records. They didn't deliberate for even more than 1 minute. It took them 59 seconds to come to a decision. And they, of course, concluded that Mary Bateman was guilty of murder. And they sentenced her to be hung. She continued to protest her innocence, and she even pulled the "I'm pregnant" card, thinking that they would never execute a pregnant woman. But the court had her examined by some midwives, or whatever they were called back then, and she wasn't pregnant. So they went ahead and they served her the justice that she definitely had coming. She was only in prison for a couple of days before the hanging, and even though she only had a mere 48 hours to live, she went right back to her old ways. She was trying to persuade female inmates that they had been cursed and they had bad fortunes coming, but for a small prison fee she could get rid of that curse. So this woman just wouldn't quit, right up until the end. She kept going, and she would have kept going, had she not been caught. Absolutely. But that is the end. That is the story of the terrible person named Mary Bateman. I don't know why I picked such a long one for my first video. Holy crap, my throat hurts. I am gonna go make some tea. Speaking of honey, I need to go eat a lot of honey or drink honey in my tea. Thank you so much. I hope you like this video. I hope you like my channel. I'm gonna work really hard. I really want this channel to pop off. I'm not gonna lie. I love researching cases like this and telling somebody about it. So please, if you wouldn't mind, help me out. Help a small channel out. Subscribe. Be one of the early subscribers. Yeah, like the video, leave a comment, say hello, and I can hear my dog upstairs. And I will see you very soon. And please leave suggestions, true crime, aliens, ghosts, anything that you think would be a cool story for me to tell you about, or, you know, give my take on it. Yeah, I'm gonna go. Goodbye, everybody, or one person who's watching. I don't know. I will see you soon.